It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today is Steve Chard. He was in the British Royal Navy. He now has his own Navy of sorts. Steve, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Donna, for letting me join you.
And all the crafts in your current Navy are what?
It's Her Majesty's Kayak Roberta.
You've been on a kayak journey for quite some time.
Since the 1st of June last year. I have had a 2-month break to go home for Christmas and sort my visa out.
Okay, what size is the kayak?
It's an 18-foot sea kayak, an expedition sea kayak. Nigel Dennis design, an Explorer, probably the best expedition sea kayak ever designed.
This journey that you are currently on, and it's called the what?
It's the Great Loop.
The Great Loop. Mm-hmm. Explain to people what the Great Loop is.
The Great Loop is normally done by boaters, so they've got an engine, and they usually start in Florida, Stuart, Florida, come up the ICW all the way to New York, up the Hudson River and into the Great Lakes, around to Chicago, and then back down the Mississippi to New Orleans, along the Gulf Intercoastal Waterway to the Florida Panhandle, around the Big Bend, and then down to Fort Myers, through the Okeechobee Waterway and Lake, back to Stuart.
This is a lot of paddling.
A lot of.
How many miles?
That Great Loop, that standard Great Loop, is 5,600 miles.
And you decided, I am bored, I just want to do something different, and let me just get out in my kayak and paddle. How many miles? 6,000 miles?
It's approximately, it's about 6,000 for me, because I'm doing a little twist on the Great Loop. Instead of starting in Florida, I started in Halifax, Nova Scotia. My brother married a Canadian, so I left Halifax Naval Base on the 1st of June last year, turned north and east to go round Cape Breton Island, Prince Edward Island, up to the Gaspé Peninsula, and then to Ottawa.
You've done
and back into the Great Lakes. So I've actually traded doing the coastline of Michigan, and instead I'm doing the coastline of New England, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia.
And you pulled into Annapolis?
On Sunday, I think it was.
And I said, when I saw you walk in, I said, "Are your arms tired?" And you said, "Not at all," because
it's the torso muscles that you use. You rotate. It's core rotation that actually gives you the propulsive power. So
there's no restrooms in your kayak. It's a kayak. There's no what I mean.
My bladder tells me when I've got to come ashore.
And you stay how close to shore?
That depends on the local terrain, because if you've got very gradual shelving beaches, you've got to stay further out, because you don't want to be continually being thrown sideways onto, albeit shallow water,
right,
where you don't want to capsize. I might have to go out round shoals and rock formations and things like that. But usually I'm a couple of 100 yards offshore. So I am coast hugging.
And your route down from Canada came
down the Mississippi in the Tennessee Tom Bigby. When I was on the Mississippi, most of the time I had a 6-knot current carrying me. So it can be anywhere between 4 and 8 knots. And it does the work
for you?
It does the work for me, yeah.
What's been the roughest so far?
The roughest so far was the Torbay area of Nova Scotia. I was out there on a day when the weather forecast wasn't quite right. The weather deteriorated a little earlier than it was supposed to, and I ended up going out around Torbay Lighthouse in a Force 5, and normally Force 4 is enough when you're on a trip like this, especially with a laden sea kayak.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We will be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I am Donna Cole, and I'm in the studio with Steve Chard. You're 61 years old?
I'm 61 now.
61 years old. He's on a 6,000-mile journey via kayak, and we're talking about all the spots he's been, all the spots you're going to. What's next on that? When you leave Annapolis?
When I leave Annapolis, obviously it's only about 20 miles a day, so I'm heading to the head of the bay. I'm heading for the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal. Then I'll go back down to Cape May, and then it's up the New Jersey Intercoastal Waterway, past Atlantic City, to get to New York Harbor.
And seriously, what made you do this? Were you bored?
I've always been a bit of a charities fundraiser, running marathons, doing long-distance cycle rides, and even a 1-mile swim in one of our open water lakes in the UK. So I decided that I wanted to do a fourth different thing to commemorate my 60th birthday, one final big charity fundraiser, and it was going to be 4 days in a kayak in the UK.
But
an event, a 120-mile event only, that you get 4 days to do. Then someone gave me a book called Honey, Let's Get a Boat, which was the story of Ron and Eva Stobb's Great Loop in their trawler yacht. And they actually went on to become the founder members of the American Great Loop Cruisers Association. So I thought, they can do it in a boat, I can do it in a kayak. So I did a little bit of research, and yes, it's been done quite a few times. The guys who really inspired me were two gentlemen, Jake Stachowak, who wrote a book called Portage to Portage, and another guy called Josh Spiner, and they've both given me some good advice in the build up to me starting my journey.
Now the fund raising money for charities is still part of this. Who are you raising money for?
It's 9 charities in total, 4 British, 3 American, 2 Canadian, and the American ones are Disabled American Veterans, the American Kidney Fund, and the U.S. Navy's Submarine Museum at Groton, Connecticut, where they have the Nautilus, because I was a submariner in the Royal Navy.
A bubblehead.
Indeed.
And thank you for your service as for one of our allies.
And for yours too.
So how did you pick these?
Everything's been associated with my working life. So, obviously being a Navy vet, and then I also joined our National Health Service and worked in our our county hospital's renal unit. So all the charities are,
that's wonderful,
closely associated.
And how much have you raised so far?
I've raised about £6,000/$dollars at the moment, and the donations across all 9 charities.
And for people that want to donate, how do they do this?
They have to do it online, and the links to the donation pages, I keep reposting them on Facebook.
On your Facebook page is what?
Kayak the Great Loop, Paddle with Steve.
And you are sharing constant photos of your adventure.
I am. I'm trying to do a post every day so people can keep up with me.
Now, when you are not a man of millions of dollars, I'm assuming.
No.
So it's hard for you to. First of all, you don't know when you're going to be landing at a spot. So how are you staying? Where are you staying? How are you staying at places?
I put an appeal out on Facebook before I even started the trip, saying, can all the local kayak clubs, etc., help me as I go around this route with a place to lay my head every night. I carry a tent in the kayak. I've got my cooking gear, I've got water, I've got food, I've got enough. I've got about 10 days supply of food on the boat and 2 gallons of water. So I am self-sufficient, and I've camped at boat ramps and places like that, and even on a sandbank in the Mississippi. But my main source of somewhere to stay has just been the local boating and kayak communities. I just appealed on Facebook. And please, guys, can I sleep on your couch tonight? I've slept in people's garages on my sleeping mat. I've slept in their RVs on the drive, and of course, mostly I've been in people's guest rooms. So people that are listening up towards the Upper Bay and the C&D Canal, he needs a place. Do you already have something lined up? I've got a place lined up I'm going to Bodkin Creek, then I'm going to the mouth of the Middle River, and then Havre something. I'm sorry, I've forgotten.
Havre de Grace.
Havre de Grace. And then also I've got a couple of hosts lined up along the C&D Canal.
And where are you staying here in Annapolis?
In Annapolis, I'm staying with a gentleman called David Seitz, who is renowned for taking photographs of the Thomas Point Show Lighthouse.
And I'm hoping to borrow one of his photos for the YouTube presentation of this interview. We're going to take another quick break. We will be back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today is not necessarily the very tired David Chard, even though I would think he would be after paddling as far as he has in his kayak. He's raising money for several charities in the United States, in England, and in Canada. He was a submariner with the British Royal Navy. Both England and here in the United States, we call him a bubblehead. So what's it like to be traveling these waterways not under them, but on top of them?
It's been the most fantastic adventure. I've met the most amazing people, seen the most amazing sights.
Let me hear about some of these adventures. First of all, I'm into wildlife, so I want to hear about some of the wildlife you've seen.
Dolphins, porpoises, seals. Unfortunately, the only whale I've seen was a dead carcass.
Was that in Virginia?
That was up north. I'm not sure if I was still in Nova Scotia or whether I'd crossed the border into New Brunswick. But it was actually a narwhal carcass on the beach.
Heartbreaking.
Unfortunately, heartbreaking. I missed seeing live whales because unfortunately the weather was against me. So when I went up the St. Lawrence, I missed seeing the beluga whale nursery near Saguenay, I think it is. Yeah. And of course the bird life has been amazing. But
well, that's what I was just about to say, because when you get up to the Upper Bay onto the Susquehanna area, there's a lot of bald eagles.
They've been around quite a bit of the route. Yeah.
Okay, so roughest conditions you said were up near Nova Scotia. Were you fearful for getting it to shore?
No.
Okay.
A little nervous, but the boat is so heavily laden that increases its stability, so I never felt like I was going to capsize. The crazy thing is, I did capsize in Pamlico Sound.
Huh.
And that was what we
North
call...
Carolina area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A bit of an own goal, if Americans understand that phrase, because it's more for soccer than your football. Wind-generated waves in shallow water.
Yeah, that can be a tough
If I had actually
right?
left my host an hour later, it wouldn't have happened because the tide was coming in, so the water was getting deeper. And if it had been a little bit deeper, those waves wouldn't have been quite enough to flip me. I realised I had to turn back. I'd made a mistake in setting off that morning. We would have to let the weather settle for a day. And of course, during my turn, I got 90% of the way through turning to go back to start paddling back to my host, and the wave just flipped me. But I was in 3 foot of water.
But you're a good swimmer, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah. Self-rescue just kicked in, and I just dragged.
Your
the
Navy
boat.
training.
Yeah, my kayak training.
And your kayak training.
My Navy training.
Right.
Yeah, because wearing a dry suit, obviously.
You have a family back home?
I'm single.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one thing I never did was get married.
So you have friends back home now, and did they say to you, "Are you crazy? Why are you doing this? Don't do this."
Absolutely. A couple of friends even went so far as to say, "You never do it, Steve." Some of that was reverse psychology to G me up.
And how many miles do you have left to go?
I've not worked it out exactly, but it's between 1,000 and 1,500, because of course you don't go up and down every creek.
Right.
You straight line the mouths of the rivers and creeks if you can, but so the mileage I can't measure it exactly because, and also it depends on where I stay. I might do a short day I might paddle up to somewhere a few miles off course because I know I've got a definite bed and a meal for the night. Right. And paddle a few extra miles. So
okay, if you had to do it all over again, which you're not finished yet, but you're getting there, what have you learned that you would have done differently?
Not to possibly ring ahead a bit sooner to get accommodation lined up. Would you believe, when I left Halifax on the very first day, I didn't know where I was staying that night. I just saw a row of cottages on the shoreline, beached my kayak, walked up to the first house, knocked the door and said, "I'm Steve, I'm doing this. Please, is there anywhere I can camp round here tonight?" And they just said, "Yeah, you can camp on our lawn."
Wow.
You can't have the guest room because we got too many children. But and that last year was the main way I found somewhere to stay every night. I didn't actually look. I mean, I was getting the Facebook offers, but of course I was in a less populated area, a more sparsely populated area. So
obviously you're an adventure seeker. Go into the military, there's an adventure seeker in you. But this is a whole new level.
It wasn't this well developed when I was younger.
Yeah, it's just, it's amazing to me. So what is next?
I'm not sure if I'll do anything as big as this next, but possibly the North Sea to the Black Sea via the Rhine and the Danube.
Oh, so you are thinking about it.
I'm thinking
already.
about it, but we'll see.
And if you could use a different, is the kayak exactly what you were hoped for? Spec'd out exactly as you needed?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. This kayak fits me like a glove. I mean, there's only one way you can choose a kayak, and that's by demoing all of them and finding the one that best suits you. So,
yeah, no problems with that.
No problems with it.
And how did you get that here or to the starting point?
I've got one kayak in the UK to train with, and and I bought the same kayak over here. I've actually bought all my equipment myself, apart from my dry suit has been sponsored.
And how did the kayaks get to its original starting point?
Oh, the guy I bought it from in New Brunswick is one of the Canadian dealers for the British manufacturer. They're his stock. It was out of his stock.
And have you had people seeing you off at all these points? Once they does the community get to know you? And as the media has already heard about you.
Yes, yeah. Not every day, but quite a few days there. People, I've had local paddlers paddle with me. The newspapers, reporters down there to see me off. Tomorrow, when I leave Annapolis from Annapolis Canoe and Kayaks boat ramp. I think it's opposite Ego Alley, you call it, don't you?
Right, we do.
Chesapeake Bay Magazine's going to be down there to see me off.
Great.
So,
and for those that are listening, you're hearing this on Friday or on Sunday. That would have already happened. I record in advance. What do you want to say to the people that have helped you along the way? Any messages of those?
Obviously, the hugest, most appreciative thanks. Everybody's done more than I thought they would do. I've been so well looked after. It's restored my faith in humanity and hospitality.
That's awesome. Okay, one more time on the Facebook page, because Steve is raising money for nonprofits in the U.S., in Canada, and in England, and he does like those donations. One more time on the Facebook page.
Kayak the Great Loop -paddle with Steve.
Steve, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to meet you.
It's been a pleasure for me too. Thank you.
This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We will see you next week.